Policies and procedures sometimes seem like a drag, but they're an important part of running a business. Stay tuned to find out more about security policies.
You're watching IT Pro TV.
Hello everyone, I'm glad you could make it back for more GSEC, and I know we're starting into something near and dear to Daniel and I's hearts. Security policies. We jest a great deal because it's just one of those things that it is a necessary component.
It is.
But sometimes I feel like I don't really know the reason or the how to or like what is expected of me. So can you just give us like just a quick little, like, why would I ever care about having a security policy on file?
You know, you wouldn't because they're dumb. No.
Oh, well, there you go. And
we got it squared away.
Have a wonderful day, folks.
No. We're just trying to have some fun. What is the purpose of a security policy? It's trying to give everybody a good set of guidelines to follow. Like, here is what we expect from security, or how we think security should be. And now, if your thought about that is different than my thought about that, we're probably going to have a hard time making security happen and getting that homogeneity or homogeneousness. Is that a word? Homogeneousness?
Homogeneity?
Homogeneity. There you go. Whatever.
Nailed it.
But that's what we're looking for, right? I need Justin to be on the same page as me when it comes to how we should implement security and what the practices are and why we're actually engaging in those things. Like, get the buy-in from everyone on why it's important. So that's where we start when it comes to security policy. It becomes this guideline, like I said, something I can look to as, if I was unsure if I should be able to use this third-party cloud storage application, I can now at least get some guidance from the security policy on whether or not that's allowable, okay? So that's why we implement security policies. Also helps us set the expectations for things like access controls and implementation and utilization of other IT components in our ecosphere. All right. Also, it helps maintain the principles of the CIA triad, which is very important. So it's kind of like another side of this thing is that we want to constantly be bolstering up confidentiality, integrity, and availability. A security policy can help make sure that that is happening. Because if you just leave it to everyone doing what's right in their own mind, then somebody might not be as savvy or familiar with good security practice for your organization. So you put it in a policy, now they know, I shouldn't use a 4-character password of all zeros. They said that's bad. I thought it was strong. Who am I, right? So there you go. Another thing is it should be continually being revised as your organization or your environment evolves, because it's going to do that. Things are going to change. So this is not a Ron Popeil, set it and forget it, stick it in the oven, put it on 45, come back and go, look at this amazing golden chicken. Nope, that's not how this works. It will be good for a certain amount of time, but you should be constantly looking into, especially when you make major revisions or upgrades or add-ons to your current situation. That's going to make this change a lot, and you'll have to revisit your security policy to make sure that your vision for security is still in line with the actual implementation of IT. So hopefully, Justin, that helps you understand why this is important. Yes, can be a drag to build, but without it, everyone's doing whatever they feel is right.
I think that's the core takeaway for me. That's when it really hit me whenever I would come together with other team members and there was ambiguity about what was acceptable. Right? Like, can we use S3 with the default policies? Or can we use a 6-character password?
Who knows?
Or can we have SSH daemons running?
Right.
If it was outlined specifically, there wouldn't be a like, well, I turned it on. I thought it was all right. Well, it's not all right. Well, who are you to say that it's not? It removes ambiguity, which by and large puts everybody on the same page.
Correct.
It's great. Now, speaking of a drag to build, part of that is I just don't know the structure of them, right? So what are the components of a security policy?
Okay, so there are many different components of a security policy. You can really salt the flavor, right? Salt the taste. You're going to see a lot of commonality between security policies, but maybe some of the things apply and some things don't. So we're going to just kind of start walking through. Here's what I've done to try to make this a little bit of an easier task for us. I've created a fake IT Pro TV security policy so that we can see some general things that we might encounter when it comes to creation of a actual security policy. So let's jump into my computer. Here it is in literal black and white. IT Pro TV security policy. Now you'll notice that we start right off with the use of this policy. Why are we using this policy? It gives that little excerpt right there, right out of the gate. People, when they pick it up and look at it, they know why this exists, what it's meant to do, right? So kind of that's where I tend to see and have experienced a good starting spot, is just right out of the gate, get that buy-in and let people know what this is for. Background is, I put background in, it can be super helpful because maybe people just don't know that you even need security for that. So, or that there's a vulnerability associated with X, Y, or Z, and therefore, because of that fact, we're going to want to enact this policy. So putting some background in there can help people understand why this is happening.
And for me, this is paramount, personally, because I'm a big proponent of knowing context or providing like meaning of why I'm doing something, instead of just going, this is what you do.
Right.
Why? Don't worry about it.
That's what we say you do.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah.
But if you can give me, hey, this is why we do, here's why, I go, oh, I can understand the impact. I'm more likely to do it personally.
We are the same person in a lot of ways.
It's
and
weird.
That one is probably why I stuck it in there, because I like to see and not just be told, do this. I get it. You run the company or whatever. I'm your employee, but it doesn't hurt to be kind to us and tell us, hey, here's why we think this is a really good idea. And if you have any feedback, you can express that. But here in that background, that's what we're trying to do. We're saying, so this is about full disk encryption, right? So background, full disk encryption is now a key privacy enhancing technology, which is mandated by many regulatory guidelines. So if there's many regulatory guidelines out there, you're probably going to go, oh, well, that makes sense. If larger organizations are seeing the benefit of disk encryption, maybe our organization, which is in the same sphere, or even if they're not, we're maybe a larger company and we fit in that mold some way, shape, or form. I see the correlation between the two things. Background helps out with that. Then we'd start to really dive in to the minutia, right? So one, purpose. We must protect restricted, confidential, or sensitive data from loss to avoid reputation damage and avoid adverse impacting our customers. And you can see I put these things in here. Actually, I kind of modified this from, I think I grabbed this from Sophos and then made it fit what we're doing today. And I like this, the complete as appropriate, so I can use this as a template for other policies and then just adjust as necessary. So it's a collection of global regulations and then complete as appropriate, where I can say, well, maybe we do have offices in the UK, so GDPR applies. Does GDPR's regulations require us to do full disk encryption on mobile devices and desktop workstations and servers? If it does, when we would want to slap GDPR in that list, and there you go. It is regulatory that we comply with this. And then again, some more. It says also require the protection of a broad scope of data, which this policy supports by restricting access to data hosted on blank devices. Again, going back to that list, is it just mobile devices? Is it just desktops? Is it both of those? Is it servers as well? Where do we need to be applying this? So again, it's those guidelines. If I buy a new phone and I come to work and I go, I want to connect it, they go, well, our security policy says that that's got to have full disk encryption. So as long as that's enabled and we can verify that, then you're being compliant with the policy. All right. Scope is another important one. Is where does this specific policy apply? Is this a general policy that applies to everyone everywhere? Or is it by department, because HR might work with different and disparate systems than IT does, or accounting? So you might want to craft individual security policies for each one of those, just because, and then of course a general umbrella one. Here we have all IT Pro TV workstations, desktops, and laptops, virtual machines, right? Because they're part of the show there, and then any exemptions that might be. Well, we've got something that if we encrypt the disk, it could cause a problem. So we need to make an exception. We need to document that exception, why it's an exception, where it's an exception, and so on and so forth. I like putting all of those things within the scope when you create these policies. All right, then the policy itself saying all devices in scope will have full disk encryption, right? Lean on other policies like acceptable use policy, and security awareness training must require users to blank if they suspect they are not in compliance. So what do I do? Here's how to be in compliance, but what do I do if I feel like I might not be in compliance? And then as you work your way down, I got a lot of stuff here. Again, this is boilerplate language that I grabbed from Sophos and kind of shoehorned it in here. But you might want to put in here what happens if someone is not in compliance. Are there ramifications, repercussions, especially if it's intentional? Maybe a dismissal is, and how many warnings do they get? Who should they contact? And so on and so forth. Technical guidelines, again, something you may or may not see, just depends. They identify requirements for technical implementation and are typically technologically specific. That is difficult to say from one word to the next because, wow.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
That was fun. There we go. Complete as appropriate. This is the standard product. So when we say disk encryption, what do we mean? Does that mean I'm using Lux because we're all Linux, or I'm using BitLocker, or if it's mobile devices, what's going on there? And we can say these are the things you're allowed to use and that you should be using because that's what we support. What kind of encryption should be used? So, I encrypted my disk with, DES. No, right? Just don't use weak encryptions. Or these are the encryption standards that we require you to use, okay? Again, giving you those guidelines. What to do with BIOS. Again, this is very specific to encrypting the disk, but the technical guidelines is the important part of here. What about these systems do my users need to know so they can properly adhere to the policy itself? And then as we move down, we got the last one that I put in, which is reporting requirements. So again, if something has gone wrong, it doesn't look like my disk is encrypted. I don't know what to do, right? And then, of course, as IT, we're going to want to do things like a monthly report that identifies the percent of encrypted systems versus assets in the scope. So we're constantly surveying the land to make sure that compliance is happening, just like we are constantly checking the land to make sure that our compliance standards our security policy is in line with what the survey looks like. We actually still have that. Or we got rid of that machine long ago. I don't even need compliance for that or security policy for that. Those systems are long dead. We need to be upgrading and evolving that. We need to be evolving the reporting requirements as well. Just keeping an eye on things, right? A monthly report that identifies the compliance status of managed encrypted systems. That's this one. So where do we look like in that realm? And then a monthly report that identifies the number of lost assets and validation that lost devices have been handled appropriately. So you see that this is rotational work. This is a cycle that you will go through constantly. Now, it's up to you. Here I put monthly, maybe it's quarterly, maybe it's yearly, depending on, this is not set in stone, this is just what's appropriate for my fake IT Pro TV security policy. So your environments are gonna very much dictate what goes into these policies, but now that you have an idea of the different components that make them up, so it's gonna be like the objectives and the purpose of it, the related documentation that might go along with it, things like an acceptable use policy, the scope, very important. Background could be very, very helpful, so I always suggest that. Specific goals that the policy is meant to bring about, and then of course the responsibilities for compliance and non-compliance as well. These are the general makeups and components of a security policy. Hopefully that helps you out, and because now you see the importance of them, it can be a drudgery to create and have to go through meetings to make these things happen. Once they're done, they are worth their weight in gold.
And there's a couple of things that I always try to think about when it comes to documentation like this. The initial writing is the biggest lift, right? The initial implementation. You should review them though, because your requirements may change. For instance, reporting. Maybe your company gets large enough, new compliance or regulatory requirements are necessary of you. Now you need to review. Maybe monthly is no longer available. Maybe you need to do biweekly, right? And biweekly as every 2 weeks, which is confusing. Not twice a week. Every 2 weeks. So
Which
don't
would
use
be
ambiguous.
bi-monthly, right? Wouldn't that be bi-monthly?
Yeah. So it's weird. So the word bi can be twice during that time,
or every other.
Yeah.
During a period.
Yeah.
That's
weird.
helpful.
Like you care about that. But just keep those things in mind when you're implementing these.
Yeah.
Very important. They can be helpful. They remove the ambiguity. I know now, hey, I need to encrypt my disk.
Yeah.
I need to have these certain settings. These are the exceptions. And here's who I need to report to when and if things go awry or there are changes necessary. So thank you so much, Daniel, and thank you for joining us. But we're going to go ahead and get out of here. So signing off for IT Pro TV, I've been your host, Justin Dennison.
I'm Daniel Lowry.
And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.